Ego is something that we all grapple with at some point in our lives, though many of us don't recognize it for what it is. It slips into the corners of our minds, weaving itself into the fabric of our daily thoughts, actions, and decisions. We believe it to be an intrinsic part of who we are, shaping our sense of identity, our needs, our desires. But in reality, it is not who we are. It is something that stands in the way of true connection, of understanding, of peace. The ego, in its deepest form, creates a sense of separation. It makes us feel as though we are isolated from others, as though we are distinct, separate entities, fighting to carve out our own space in the world. It drives us to seek validation from the outside world, to prove ourselves in the eyes of others, to achieve success, to gain admiration, to feel superior. Yet, when we operate from this place of ego, we are constantly chasing something that can never be fully attained because the ego is insatiable. You may achieve great things, receive praise, or attain wealth, but the ego will not let you rest. It will ask for more, push you harder, tell you that it's not enough, that you are not enough. It will convince you that without the external validation, without the titles or the accomplishments, you are nothing. It will whisper lies that you are only as good as what you can show, as good as what you can prove. But in that process, the ego leads us astray, for it is not the external that defines us. It is the internal peace, the inner stillness, that makes us whole. The trap of the ego is not merely in its desire for more. It is in its ability to distract us from the present moment, to take us away from the truth of who we are. The ego constantly pulls us into the past or the future, forcing us to replay old stories or project new ones. It is obsessed with what has been and what could be, but it forgets the power and potential of what is. True fulfillment, true contentment, is not found in the acquisition of things, nor in the approval of others. It is found in the quiet, humble acceptance of the present moment, of the stillness that exists beyond the noise of the ego's demands. We are not the roles we play, not the titles we wear, not the accomplishments we boast. We are the awareness that watches all of this unfold. When we begin to see through the illusion of the ego, when we no longer identify with its desires, its fears, its cravings, we can begin to experience the world as it truly is, not through the lens of the self, but through the lens of presence. It is then that we can truly be free. Freedom from the ego is not an absence of self. It is the recognition that the self is a temporary construct, a fleeting story that arises and fades. It is a knowing that beneath all the layers of identity, beneath all the noise of the mind, there is something timeless, something unchanging, something eternal. In this space, there is peace, there is joy, there is a profound connection with the world around us. The challenge, then, is not to fight the ego or try to annihilate it, for that only feeds its power. The challenge is to observe it, to see it for what it is, a thought, a pattern, a habit. It will arise and it will pass. We do not need to identify with it, nor let it control us. We are the awareness that can choose how to respond, how to be present with whatever arises. This is where true freedom lies, not in the pursuit of more, but in the surrender to what already is. The ego trap is one that so many fall into without even realizing it. We get caught in the cycle of striving, seeking, achieving, yet never feeling truly fulfilled. But if we can step back, if we can quiet the mind and return to the present moment, we will see that everything we have ever needed is already here. We don't have to prove ourselves to anyone. We don't have to chase after anything. All we need to do is let go of the illusion that we are separate, and instead, rest in the truth of who we are. The concept of the ego can be elusive, yet its impact on our lives is undeniable. It shapes how we see ourselves, how we interact with others, and even how we perceive the world around us. It can lead us to become attached to our ideas, our achievements, and even our emotions, making us think they define who we are. We walk through life, often unaware, trapped in this constant battle with ourselves. The ego is sneaky, it doesn't announce itself. It works quietly, like a shadow that follows us wherever we go, distorting our true sense of being. In our society, we are conditioned to believe that success, recognition, and status are the ultimate goals. We start measuring our worth based on external validation. How many likes we get, the accolades we receive, the opinions others hold about us. The ego feeds on these things. It convinces us that we need them to feel complete, to feel important, to feel loved. And in doing so, it traps us in a cycle of constant striving, always chasing something just out of reach. We become so focused on the pursuit of these external things that we lose sight of what truly matters, the quiet peace that resides within us when we let go of all the noise. But the problem with the ego's trap is that it's never satisfied. No matter how much we achieve, how many people recognize us, it always craves more. It's a hunger that can never be fully quenched. And in the process, we become disconnected from our true selves, from our core essence, the part of us that doesn't need validation or recognition. The more we feed the ego, the more it demands, until we feel like we're living for others, not for ourselves. This constant striving leads to frustration. We start to feel as though something is missing, even when we have everything we thought we wanted. We find ourselves looking for meaning in things that can't provide it, seeking approval from people who may never give it, and clinging to accomplishments that are fleeting. The ego keeps us trapped in the illusion that we are separate from everything else, that we are defined by our possessions, our jobs, our relationships. But deep down, we know that these things cannot truly define us. They may fill a temporary void, but they can never bring us lasting peace. When we learn to let go of the ego's grip, when we stop identifying so strongly with our thoughts, our emotions, and our achievements, we begin to experience a deeper sense of freedom. It's not about giving up ambition or striving for success. It's about realizing that we are not defined by the external world. We don't need the approval of others to feel worthy. We don't need to prove ourselves in order to be at peace. True contentment comes from within, from embracing who we are without the need to constantly compare ourselves to others or measure our worth by external standards. The moment we stop letting the ego control us, we start to experience life in a different way. We become more present, more aware of the beauty and simplicity that surrounds us. We begin to find joy in the smallest moments, in the quiet moments of solitude, in the connections we share with others without needing anything in return. We realize that the pursuit of happiness doesn't lie in external achievements, but in the acceptance of ourselves as we are, free from the weight of the ego's demands. The ego trap is a powerful force, but it doesn't have to define us. We have the ability to step outside of it, to recognize when it's leading us astray, and to choose a different path. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to let go of the illusion of control. But once we do, we are free to live a life that is truly ours, authentic, peaceful, and filled with a deeper sense of meaning. The biggest ego trap is the one we find ourselves in when we believe that we are our thoughts, our emotions, our achievements, or our possessions. We build a self-image based on what we think we should be, what we believe we have to become, or what we feel we are entitled to. And as this image solidifies, we start to live through it, desperately clinging to it, protecting it at all costs. We begin to identify with everything external, how we look, what we own, and the status we acquire. But this is not who we are. This is a story we've woven around ourselves, a temporary construct that fluctuates with circumstances. The mind, in its relentless pursuit of control, feeds us the illusion of security through attachment. It tells us that our worth is tied to how much we have, how many people admire us, or how successful we become. Yet, each time we reach for these things, we encounter a moment of dissatisfaction. We're never truly fulfilled, because the ego, which thrives on external validation, can never be satisfied. It is an unending cycle of striving for more praise, more power, more possessions, and yet, it leaves us feeling hollow. But if we dig deeper, we begin to understand that this constant chasing is driven by fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of being forgotten, fear of losing our identity. The more we chase, the more we become entangled in the idea that our worth is determined by what we have or how we appear to others. We start to measure ourselves against others, comparing our lives to theirs, thinking we need to be somewhere we are not, doing something we are not, in order to be truly happy. And so, we trap ourselves. We trap ourselves in the illusion of becoming something else, something that we believe will bring us happiness, something that will fulfill us. But in truth, we are already complete. We don't need more. The very moment we realize that we are not the ego, we are not our thoughts or achievements or failures, is the moment we can start to experience peace. We can begin to let go of the constant pressure to prove ourselves to the world, to the people around us, and most importantly, to ourselves. We are not defined by what we do or have, we are defined by the awareness of who we truly are beyond all the labels, beyond all the attachments. This doesn't mean we stop engaging with the world or pursuing our passions. It means we no longer depend on these things to validate our worth. We no longer feel the need to impress, to perform, or to live up to an image. We live freely, without the constant noise of the ego demanding attention. When we stop chasing and start being, we find a peace that transcends the external world. A peace that doesn't rely on any circumstance. A peace that is independent of time and place. But the trap is always there, waiting. The mind will try to pull us back, trying to convince us that we are nothing without our story, without our ego. But once we see through this illusion, once we recognize it for what it is, we stop feeding it. And in that silence, in that stillness, we find the truest form of ourselves, free from the ego's grip, and at peace with who we are. The biggest ego trap, then, is not something that happens to us. It's something we allow to happen by believing we are separate from the world, by clinging to the idea that our worth is measured by what we have or what we can achieve. When we let go of this belief, we realize that we are not here to be someone. We are simply here to be, and that being in its purest form is enough. It's all too easy to get lost in the pursuit of external validation. So many of us seek recognition, approval, and praise from others, believing that it will finally fill the emptiness we feel inside. We constantly chase after success, status, and material wealth, convinced that these things will grant us lasting happiness and fulfillment. But here's the paradox. The more we chase, the further away it seems. We think that by becoming better, smarter, wealthier, or more influential, we will finally be at peace. But that's an illusion, one that keeps us running in circles, never truly satisfied. The more we identify with these external accomplishments, the more we tie our sense of worth to fleeting things. This is where the trap lies. The truth is that our sense of self is not defined by what we achieve or how others perceive us. But that truth is hard to grasp. We live in a world where external markers of success seem to define everything. We are constantly comparing ourselves to others, measuring our lives by a set of standards that we didn't create, yet we think they will make us happy. What if, instead of constantly striving to prove our worth, we began to see that we already have inherent value, that we are enough just as we are? Imagine a life where we aren't defined by our job titles, our possessions, or the number of people who admire us. Imagine being free from the pressure of needing to be seen as better in the eyes of the world. The ego loves this chase. It thrives on the belief that there's always something more to achieve, something more to become. But every time we reach what we thought was the pinnacle, the ego sets a new goal, a new desire, pulling us further into the cycle. The trap becomes deeper, and the emptiness we feel only grows because we've been looking in the wrong place all along. The more we attach ourselves to the idea of a perfect future, the more we miss the present moment, the only moment that truly matters. The future is an illusion, an idea we create in our minds. But the present is real, tangible, and accessible. It's the only place where true peace can be found. So what if the answer isn't more achievement, but more presence? More acceptance of ourselves right here and right now? What if we could find contentment not in the next big thing, but in the small moments, the quiet pauses between the noise of our lives? Breaking free from the ego trap isn't about rejecting ambition or goals, but about understanding that our worth is not tied to them. It's about realizing that we don't need to chase anything to feel whole. We already are.